Hello! I'm sure most of you probably just know me as the meme guy, but today I wanted to talk about something a bit more serious. So this is the what I'm calling pilot episode of a series of RuneScape Real Talks, as I'm calling them. It's going to be a sort of podcasty type series because, you know, who doesn't want to make a podcast? I'm a YouTuber, of course I love the sound of my own voice. Of course I'm a massive narcissist. It's just going to be me talking, you know, mostly unedited, mostly unscripted. I've got a list of talking points, but there's no real script. The idea is just to get my thoughts out there, just to get a discussion going, you know, talk with all of you, maybe change some minds. I don't think that'll happen very much, but if I change one or two minds, I still think it's worth it. And really, just want to get ideas. You know, you can tell me I'm wrong, get in those comments, harass me, I love it. But yeah, so if this isn't your normal thing, absolutely fine, give it a skip. I won't hold it against you. You know, it's not meant for everyone. So, today's subject. So the new reworked wildy bosses just dropped, and they look awesome. I've seen lots of videos of people going and killing them. The wildy looks, you know, more lively than it has for a long time, and it looks sick. The content creators and stuff have had a great time. Everyone who's done it seems really into it. Looks really good. There's been a downside to it, and that is the argument between the PvPers and the non-PvPers, the PvMers, has started up again. You know, with it being a wildy-based update, and with it moving the dragon pickaxe out of the wildy, the argument starts up again. You know, catering to Iron Men ruins the game. No, PKers are all toxic griefers who just want to kill me for my monk's robe. No, if you don't want to lose stuff, don't go in the wildy. But I'm forced to go in the wildy. Blah 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 blah. You know, we've all heard it. We've heard all the arguments 100 times. And what I'm hoping to do is to try and reduce that number of arguments a bit by, you know, just hopefully making people think a bit more about what they say, but also trying to come up with some solutions that I think could make it better, could make the situation better for both sides, because I think that's what we really need. If we can't develop it without bearing both sides in mind, because then one side's always going to be unhappy. And I think both sides are as important as each other. So for the purposes of this video, by PKer, I'm meaning anyone that goes to the wilderness with the intention of killing other players. It doesn't matter if those are people who intend to fight other PKers, who are going to fight with them one-on-one, or clans, or multi, or anyone who goes just trying to kill bots, or killing people who aren't going to fight back. All those groups, I'm calling all of them PKers for the purposes of this. And by PvMers, I mean everyone who goes to the wildy not intending to fight people. So, of course, all the Iron Men, anyone going for a clue scroll to fight the bosses who isn't going to try and fight back, you know, those sort of people. I do need to let you know my biases. I am an Iron Man player. I only play Iron Man accounts. I don't have a main. I've never really done any PvP. I've tried to get into it, but for reasons that I'll get onto in this video, that hasn't succeeded. And I think those reasons are very similar for a lot of other people. But also, all of this is going to be from my perspective as an Iron Man. My views on the PvP side of things mostly come from seeing the multitudes of PKing content. There's loads of it. It's fun to watch. What people have said online, and by combining all that information together, I have a view on how PKing is. But obviously, I am going to be biased on one side, but I am going to try my best to keep both sides in mind because I think that's important. I think PKers deserve to be respected just as much as my side, the Iron Man side. I don't want to hold it against people just because they want to play the game a different way to how I play it, you know? We're all playing the same game. I just want the game to be fun for everyone, even if they play it in a way that I don't personally like, you know? The biggest thing I want to do is just try and tone down the hatred that each side seems to have for each other. There's absolutely vile things being said to each other, and we're all playing the same game. We all came to old school for the same reason. You know, we just want to have a good time. It's supposed to be a game at the end of the day. It's supposed to be fun. It's not meant to turn into a shouting match on Twitter or Reddit about which side's killing the game or whatever. You know, we both just want to play the game. We're both paying our membership to Jagex. They both, you know, they should care about both of us. So, the first thing I just want to mention is, please, let's just begin by saying, stop calling each other names, you know? Neither side is going to convince the other to change their minds through this sort of approach. You're not going to convince PvMers to come and give PKing a try by calling them all loser crybabies, and PvMers aren't going to convince PKers to stop killing them by calling them all toxic griefers. As soon as you start the argument of oh, PvMers are just crybabies who can't afford to lose anything. If you start turning them all to straw men, it's not helpful, and it's not even accurate. Sure, some members of that community are going to fit that description. You know, some PvMers are crybabies. I'm guilty of it. I've cried about it sometimes. It's annoying. It sucks. And some PKers are toxic. You know, when you get killed for if you get 10 people stacking on you and they're all saying "sit nerd her," you know, that is pretty toxic and it's lame and there's no need for it. When they start bringing out the slurs, the racist stuff, the homophobic stuff, there's no other way to describe it. That is toxic as fuck. But it's not fair on the rest of the PKers for you to call all of them toxic. And it's just, you know, it's not fair from either side. It's not accurate from either side. And it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't encourage change. It's just going to keep perpetuating the same cycle, which isn't what either side wants. You know, it's just going to make PKing become more and more dead as less and less people want to go to the wildy. And that's not what PKers want. And for PvMers, they're just probably going to get killed more and more for their crap because there's less and less of them in there. So the few PKers that are left are going to become more and more concentrated on them and get more and more toxic because they start insulting them more because they see them as killing the game, you know? And it's just an endless hateful cycle until one day Jagex just decides to nuke the wilderness or something. And we don't want that. And when you're there, yelling at each other, you know, cursing each other out, Jagex is much less likely to listen to you. If you want the game to change, it's not going to happen by going to Jagex and telling them, you know, oh, these guys are all effing this, effing that, killing this, terrible that. It's much less likely. You know, you're gonna get a much better response if you say, hey, Jagex, here's the issues that we feel there are. Here's some solutions we have. Please make changes to them. Here's what my Iron Man friends think. Here's what my PKer friends think. We came together. We came to this group solution that fits both of us. They're much more likely to listen to that, you know, if you approach it in a more friendly way, you know, or wholesome. This shouting match stuff, this accusing each other of killing the game, of not playing it properly, it just creates this horrible atmosphere that we see almost at the end of every update. This isn't just a PKer and PvMer thing. Like every update, almost every update, is going to appeal to one side of the community more than the rest, you know? A raid is going to appeal more to high-level players. A newbie quest that takes 5 minutes is going to appeal more to newbie players. But it's not fair to get mad at them for being catered to, you know? As long as every community gets something, you know, within reasonable time. PKers don't get things very often, I know that. But hey, my goal with this video is to get more people PKing, actually. If there's more people, then you'll get more updates. So I think instead of getting mad at each other, it's more important to understand why the other side feels the way it does. If PKers can try and understand why PvMers feel so bad, and if PvMers can understand why PKers feel so bad, then, you know, show some empathy for your fellow human beings. Then once you do that, you can see, oh, this is why they want. I can relate to that because that's the same as this part of my gameplay, you know? And then we can start coming up with solutions. So I'm going to take it from the PKer side first, from what I believe is the PKer side. So PKers generally want interesting fights, you know? They want to go and find someone who is roughly of the same level of them, who provides an interesting challenge that is going to fight back, and they're going to have to outskill them and really, you know, when they kill them, they feel accomplished because they were better than them. You know, they really tried, they put in the effort, and they showed to them that, hey, I'm the better PKer, and I beat you, fair and square, GG, good fight. If you're the sort of person who wants to go to the wildy and just clown people and steal their stuff, I'm sorry, but this isn't for you. You know, I'm of the opinion that no one deserves to be able to take the stuff of other people. Just, you know, just to do it, just to take it. I'm not saying that, you know, that's not how the wilderness should work, or that people shouldn't drop their items or anything. What I'm saying is that no one is entitled to clown people, you know? It's like smurfing in a game like COD, in anything with a ranked system. No one likes smurfs. It's not fun. It's not funny to the other team. It's not fair. Yeah, it's fun to clown some noobs every so often, but it's really not cool, and it ruins the game. So I'm not aiming for that. I don't want to continue the approach where we keep baiting people into the wilderness to act as sort of loot pinatas for PKers to just hunt down and kill, because that's just not fun for the PvMer side. No one wants to be the bait. There's no challenge to that. They don't gain anything. I want to mostly focus on the idea of PKing being about fair fights with interesting mechanics and challenges. So when the PKer goes and he goes to somewhere like Scorpio and he kills the guy for his monk's robes, is that really fun? Probably not. Like, it's probably fun the first few times, like, oh, look how quick he died, ha, he's funny, I got him, good fight. But once you've taken all those loot keys to the loot chest in the Ferox Enclave and you've got 30k each from them, like, you're gonna feel bummed out, I'm sure you must. You know, you want good loot. PKers are often saying, like, no one risks anything. I want to get some loot, I want some rewards. What's the point of going through all the effort of making a PvP account, going to the wilderness, hopping through all the worlds, if as soon as you find someone, they're not risking anything anyway? Like, you went through all that effort, didn't even gain anything. I'm sure that they'd much rather have real people to fight that risk real things, you know, real PKers. If we can encourage there to be more real PKers in the wilderness, then there'll be more real loot for them to get, because those people will have to risk the things it requires them to use to fight you, you know? They'll have to risk some actual gear. So for the PKer side, PKers are bummed out because there's not very many people to fight, and most of the people that they do fight aren't risking anything. So they're going through all this effort for no gain. So on the PvMer side, they go to the wilderness, and what are they looking for? They're looking to fight bosses for GP, but less the GP side, because, you know, if all they wanted was GP, they probably wouldn't bother going to the wilderness. They can make plenty of money from Zul'Vara or Vorkath, you know, and it's going to be comparable to what they could make in the wilderness, with the exception of Revenants, but that whole place is a shit show. No, I'm not obviously excluding the Revenants, which is sort of a complete mess. We know about the history of that. I'm not going to get into that. But people aren't going to the wilderness for GP mostly. They're going for collection log slots, for pets, and for Iron Man progression. You know, if you're an Iron Man and you want an Odium Ward or a Major Arena Cave, I mean, everyone needs it for a Major Arena Cave. If you want a dragon, or until recently a Dragon Pickaxe, you had to go to the wilderness. And everyone always says, you know, oh, that's what Iron Men signed up for, but it's not really what they signed up for. Iron Men signed up to be self-sufficient and to have to grind out the bosses to get all their items. You know, I don't think any of them really sat down with a piece of paper and went through every item they were going to have to get and be like, oh, actually, I need to think about the Dragon Pickaxe. You know, it was probably an afterthought. Now, you know, the Dragon Pickaxe was added to the wilderness before Iron Man even existed, so this issue's always existed from day one. But it's always been a point of contention because the Dragon Pickaxe, it's a skilling item to make you mine ores a bit faster. Like, the sort of person who wants that is nowhere near the sort of person that wants to go to the wilderness and fight people, you know? They don't mind mining to be 5% faster. They don't want to be trying their hardest to outskill someone and risking stuff. They just want to mine a bit faster, you know? It's a weird choice of item to put there. Putting the wilderness boss weapons there, you know, the flail, the scepter, the bow, from the new wilderness bosses, they make way more sense because they're good PKing items, and they're also good for killing the wilderness bosses or revenants. So it makes sense for them to be in the pool because there's a lot of crossover between the kind of person that wants those items and the kind of person that wants to do that content. Excellent idea. For things like Major Arena Capes and Odium Wards, every PvM is going to want those. So why does every PvM have to be forced to do something they don't want to do? It's a bit strange. And of course, the PKers can say, well, we're forced as well to do stuff that we don't want to do. We have to do Recipe for Disaster for Barrows Gloves. We have to do quests and stuff. And yeah, I mean, there is a fair point to that. Jagex even tried to give PKers a way to get PKing gear through PKing with the PvP arena, and everyone voted no to it. And you can't blame spite voting for that, because Jagex reduced the voting pool to be about 5 people who were all PKers. And they still voted no. So there's clearly some people clearly don't want that approach. There were other issues with that, like the defense requirements and stuff, but I think it shows that the average person is mostly okay with doing that, with doing the stuff as they always have. And I do think that it's distinctly different to be forced to go into the wilderness versus being forced to do a quest, you know? A quest, you don't have players who get in the way and actively try to stop you achieving your goal. You know, it's just you versus the game, and it's the same for everyone. Whereas a PvP, it's very different based on the kind of player you are. Yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but the point I'm making is that when PvM is going into the wilderness, they're not going there for a fight. They're mostly looking for collection log slots, maybe pets, or Iron Man progression. Things like an Odium Shard. So being interrupted and being killed is a massive feel bad. You don't die because you make a mistake like you do at the rest of the game. If you die as Zul'Vara, it's because either you got unlucky with bad RNG, but most likely you did something wrong. You missed your prayer. You and you stepped in the wrong place. You lost because you made a mistake and the game beat you. You failed at a challenge, and you can go back and you can get your stuff, and and you got gravestones and stuff. But if you die in the wilderness, even if you don't lose the items, it feels so bad because someone went out of their way to come to you, hunt you down, and kill you and take your stuff. It's the principle of it just feels so bad. And it's like, yeah, you should take it personally, it's just a game, but it feels personal. It feels like, why does this person dislike me so much that they had to kill me and take my stuff? And that's not what that person means. The person, I mean, of course, some of them are like that, but most people they just want to enjoy the game, and this is a part of the game that they enjoy. The mechanics are there, they've always been there, and they like executing those mechanics. But on the PvMer side, you've had a lot of time wasted, because you now have to re-gear, go back. You probably won't go to that activity for a few hours in case they find you again. So you have to wait. And it's the only part of the game that has this sort of problem, where players can actively stop you from accomplishing your goals. Everything else, as long as you can learn the mechanics and grind it for long enough, you will achieve it. You can grind silver, you can grind bandos. This part of the game just feels so different to the rest, and a lot of people think that's a good thing, and I'm fine with that. But it's not what a lot of people signed up for when they wanted to play the game. It's not what they signed up for when they made their accounts. Which I think is why you get so many complaints about it, because it's so different from the rest of the game. People say, don't go to the wildy, don't risk what you're not willing to lose. But the thing is, most people don't risk what they're not willing to lose. And then they don't risk anything and you don't get any loot. So that's already kind of a thing that's happening. But the main thing is that it's not truly optional. You are kind of forced to go in, not that you're forced, but you're encouraged through the collection log and the items that you acquire there. If you want a major RuneScape, you are forced to go there. There's no way around that. So when a PvMer is in the wilderness, they're not really having a good time for the whole point, because they have to spend the whole time with their finger on the logout button or their teleport, their grand seed pod. That's not fun. It's not gameplay. It's just staring at a button, waiting to pull the trigger if you see a white dot on the minimap, or more likely a red dot on the minimap because you're using RuneLight with the player indicators plugin. That's not gameplay. That's not fun. But they feel forced to do that because they're not going to engage in the fight, because they probably won't win. They don't feel like a balanced fight. And this leads into my next thing, is that the risk reward versus the PvMer and the PKer is massively unbalanced. The PKer is fighting to take your stuff. If he fails and you get away, he doesn't lose anything. He just loses a few runes that he used to try and freeze you, a few bolts, a few potions. He doesn't lose anything. He's just like, damn, he got away, and he can move on to the next one. Whereas the PvMer is fighting to keep their stuff. If they win, they don't gain anything. They don't gain anything if they win. They're just fighting not to lose. If they lose all their stuff. If they win, they just don't lose it. The balance of power between the two is massively wrong. It's massively sided towards the PKer side. That's why it feels so bad for the PvMer, because even if they win and they escape, they don't gain anything. And they still wasted all that time from having to escape. They didn't gain anything during that time. We're all massive efficiency hounds. If it takes you 10 minutes to escape, that's 10 minutes of experience you didn't get to gain. And then you have to re-gear, find a new world, all that stuff. And it feels like a massive waste of time. It would be like if you were a Bandos and you got crashed every 3 minutes because someone just decided to come in and take your world. That's what it feels like. It feels like getting crashed. But even worse, because they can take your stuff. And most of the time it's not about the GP of it, it's just the time wasted. I lost 3 prayer potions, now I need to go and buy some more. Stuff like that. Of course it's even worse for Iron Men, but I'm going to do a whole section on those later anyway. But of course, when you are Iron Man, you have zero incentive to fight back, because you can't even claim you do anything with the items if you get them. And you can't take anything that risks anything, because it's not just a few 100,000 GP or a few mil GP. It can be hundreds of hours of grinding required to get those items back. So you can never take anything that's worth anything to the wilding. You can't take any good fighting back gear, and you can't use the loot even if you win. So those are the two sides, and neither of them are having a good time. Can we improve things in a way that makes it better for both sides? I think we can. Let's try. And together, everyone, not just me because I've got the microphone, everyone, get in the comments, shout abuse at me, tell me I'm wrong, come up with your own ideas as well. Can we come up with improvements that take both sides into account, rather than just yelling at each other, please? So you could do things from really drastic all the way down to much simpler. On the most drastic side, now I'm not saying they should do this, but on the most drastic side, they could take everything out of the wildy that a PvMer would want. You know, there isn't PK based, so there isn't a PK item. All the Odium Ward, the Malediction Ward, the Chaos Altar, those are the main ones. The Mage Arena Capes. Take it all out of the wildy and give it non-PvP area alternatives. Obviously, you'd have to massively rebalance these things to make up for the lack of risk, but you remove that point. PvMers and PKers no longer have any reason to ever cross each other. Great, but now I don't think that's a great solution because then the wildy will be completely dead, and I don't want that. You know, PKers are a big part of this game, and they deserve to be here, and they make good content. So, you know, I don't think that's a good solution, but it is a thing. It is a possible future that we could end up with if we keep going the way that we do, because the side that doesn't want a PK is pretty large, and they're kind of sick of having their time wasted. But I think there's a better way, so I'm going to pitch that to you now. Instead of trying to just keep things going as they are, why don't we encourage the PvMer side to try and PK, to try and fight back more often? If more people felt comfortable trying to PK, they won't complain as much. They're more likely to try and fight back and try and take your items from you and try and get into a good fight. This is something that I want to do. I want to try and get into PKing. I want to try and learn how to fight back. But there's quite a lot of barriers on that, I think. Which I'm going to talk about. The more people we can encourage to get into PKing, the better the PKing will be. It'll be more active, you'll get more better fights, and you'll get more loot. And that's what PKers want, right? So what is stopping PvMers from learning to PK? And it's not just because they're all spineless losers, before you start typing that in the comments. To me, I think it's because the barrier to entry to PKing is too high. It's hard to get into PKing if you've never done it before. You know, PKing has been around for 20 years at this point. People who are good at it are very good at it. The mechanics are quite complicated, and it's too much to expect an average person who's been chopping U's for 6 hours to try and jump into on the deep end. So what I want to do is try and lower the barrier to entry for PKing. Now I want to make this very clear. The idea is to not change PvP to be dumbed down. I'm going to repeat that. I do not want to dumb down PvP. I want to keep it as it is. You know, people like it the way it is. Some people used to like it even more, but hey ho. I do not want to dumb down PKing to cater to noobs or anything. What I want to do is introduce steps that people can go through to try and ease them into the idea of PKing, so that more people will be willing to give it a go. Obviously, this is just my personal views as a non-PKing Iron Man, but I watch a lot of PvP content and I really want to give it a go, but every time I try and get into the idea of it, these barriers stop me, you know. If I get things wrong about the way PKing is, you know, please tell me. I'll try and correct things if I can. Yeah, PvP looks fun. I want to get into it. But what stops me? So, the current options I have, I can either go on. I can do LM if I'm on my Iron Man account, which is what I play. My options are to go on LMS basically, and LMS is not in a great state. As we all know, it's full of bots that a lot of which are PKing at a level that is far beyond anything a human can do. The other side is that they're complete pushovers. Neither of those is good option or good outcomes. You know, it's not fun to fight someone that is impossible to beat, and it's not fun to fight someone who is a pushover. That doesn't teach you anything about PKing. So, you know, obviously the bot thing needs to be fixed for LMS will ever be a reasonable way to get into PK. But the main thing is that it's all tri-breeding. There's no entry-level alternative. There's nothing simpler. Tri-breeding is hard, it's complicated. It's not an entry-level step one, oh, let's give PKing a go gameplay. You know, it's difficult. There's a lot to keep track of. You need to change prayers, you need to change weapons, you need to change armor, and then you also need to be able to do specs and combo eats and all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's pretty far removed from what PKing. A lot of people remember PKing being anyway. Most people just went to Edgeville with their Rune Scimitar or Dragon Scimitar and hit each other until one ran out of sharks, you know? So yeah, LMS is not a real option to learn to PK because it drops you in at the deep end. There's a lot to keep track of. It's not very appealing to someone who's never PK'd. Whereas the other option, you can go on PvP worlds. But as I see a lot of people complain about, PvP worlds are horribly unbalanced. You can get attacked by people that are 15 levels higher than you. It's full of people who are rushing, just trying to take all your stuff. the risk involved and the stuff you're going to lose is just not fun for beginners. Beginners don't want to go in and have to basically chuck loads and loads of money down the drain to even have a shot of getting the basics, you know? It's not very friendly to newbies. And plus, with it, Iron Man can't do it. You need an account specifically built for PvP. Your average account is probably going to be leveled wrong, unless you go all the way up to max and you try and do maxed main PKing. But that's so difficult that most people aren't going to be ready to do that either. Your last option is you can go to the wilderness, but again, just like PvP worlds, you need an account kind of specifically built for it. You know, you're with a specific combat level in mind that will have access to specific things and not have access to other things, so that you are fighting people of another predicted level range. If you just go on the regular account that you use every day, it's probably going to be leveled wrong and you're probably going to get annihilated by people who can do way more damage than you for the combat level. And again, Iron Man can't do that. When you go into the wildy, you've got no clue what you're going to be fighting or what you'll get into. You know, you could run into noobs, you could run into complete sweats who are way stronger than you. It's not a great environment to get started in. There's lots of weird edge cases in the way the mechanics work that you aren't really told, like where are the multi-zones? You just have to know them. If I'm in a multi and you're in a singles, who can get attacked by multiple people? I don't know. How does singles plus works? If you ever ask anyone, you get 3 different answers. No one really understands. You can't use the spec orb for some reason. There's all these weird mechanics there. There's nowhere in the game that it tells you these things. You just have to know. So it's a lot to get, and it's very overwhelming. You're very likely to die to something that you don't understand. You can't learn from that. And again, you have to risk your GP and your items, and it's not going to be much fun. We really need a risk-free environment for people to learn to PK. And obviously, LMS would be the best place for that, because it already exists in the game. There's no risk, Iron Man can do it, it's got rewards, cool. Let's make LMS work for new players, people getting into PKing for the first time. Let's introduce some simpler modes. I've seen footage of the older ones where, before it became tri-breeding only, you used to have all sorts of random stuff. Let's bring that sort of thing back. Maybe have it on rotations, you know? If there's not enough players to populate both versions. You know, this week we have Chaos mode, or whatever we call it, but they have the simpler modes. And next week we have the hardcore tri-breed modes for those who like that. The idea is to introduce the mechanics of PvP slower. So, you know, the simple mode of LMS, you know, maybe you are on an account that doesn't have access to protection prayers. Maybe you don't have spec weapons. Maybe you don't have potions. You know, just simpler things, so that people can have an environment to learn the basics before they have to get into learning all the more complicated stuff. A drowning man cannot learn to swim, and playing LMS when you've never PK'd before feels like drowning. There's just too much to pay attention to. Obviously you've got to fix the bots as well. Maybe introduce some new rewards, but careful with that. We don't need a new flood of new items into the game. Maybe just something to encourage people to give it a go who haven't tried it already. That would be my first idea, is to you know, leverage LMS to be a good place to start PKing, because currently it's not, and really nowhere is. There's no good place to start PKing. Other things I think that could help. One thing is to try and reduce the number of edge case mechanics. There are, you know, differences in the mechanics between the wildy and everyone else. So the spec orb is the obvious one. Like, why can't we use the special attack orb in the wilderness? It's slower than using F keys anyway. We may as well just allow it. I really don't think it's worth polling, to be honest. I think it's so simple and so small and won't change PKing at all. So I would just add it back in, but that's just me. But also just mechanics not being obviously displayed. So a big one is multi. Like, the only indication you have that you're in multi is when those tiny little swords appear in the corner. And it's very easy to miss. You could very easily be being loaded into a multi-combat area and not know it. And that shouldn't really be possible, because it shouldn't be so easy to die to something that you couldn't see coming. Multi-combat zones should be very clearly marked on the map, in the game world. It should be very obvious what you're doing, you know, what you're getting yourself into. If you don't want to fight in multi, you shouldn't be forced to, or it shouldn't be snuck up on you, you know. And we see all the videos recently from people like Framed. No hate on Framed, this is what he does. He does great, you know. Makes way better videos than I ever could. But We saw him recently, he made a video all about how the guy is stood in singles and he thinks he's in single combat, but he's attacking someone that's in multi, which means he can now be attacked as if he was in multi. That sort of thing shouldn't be possible, because that guy doesn't know what he's getting himself into. It's basically a lure. It's not the same as a skill trick, but it's not far off, and we fixed skill tricking, so I think we should be able to fix this too. People shouldn't be able to die to stuff that they weren't aware that they were getting themselves into, is what I'm getting at. Focus should be on keeping fights fair, not being a case of who can abuse the mechanics the most that the other one doesn't know, you know? The map for which zones are multi and which zones are single is a bit random anyway. Just you'll have random multi-zones right next to, in the middle of nowhere. You know, around bosses it makes sense, but like, why is there a random one, you know, in the middle of nowhere? What you could do, this is very drastic and it wouldn't pass, but a solution that would make it very clean is you say, okay, everything below this level of wilderness, maybe 20, is singles. Everything past that level is multi. But maybe that's not what people want, you know, because people want access to both singles and multi-PKing at both high and shallow and deep wildy. So maybe that's not the right solution, but it's just an idea. It would make it very clean and obvious, you know. If you're past this level of wildy, it's multi. Everything before that is singles. But more likely, just create some system that people can use, not just in RuneLite, but in the actual main normal client that says, hey, if you cross this tile, you're going into wildy. Maybe put it on the minimap. Maybe put it in the game world. I don't know the right way it should look, but making it more obvious just reduces the amount of times that people get themselves into a feel bad situation where it's like, oh, I didn't know I was in wildy, and then I didn't know I was in multi, and then his clan logged in, and they all spec'd me, and I instantly died. That's not what I signed up for. I came to fight in singles in a fair fight. Speaking of singles, how the hell does Singles Plus even work? No one seems to know. If you ask 10 people, you'll get 11 different answers. So yeah, those are the two main ones to encourage most people, is just reducing the barrier to entry, creating a good entry point to start PKing. The other big thing is I think we should bring Iron Men to the table. Oh, I can hear your groans. I can hear the collective groans of everyone. Oh my god, it's the Snowflake Iron Men. They're asking to be catered to again. And yeah, there's a little bit of that. But if the point of this video is to cater to PKers, and so I think it's okay to cater to everyone in this, you know, not just any one particular group. Iron Men are a significant portion of the player base. So I think they deserve to be listened to just as much as everyone else. The idea isn't to make it super easy for Iron Man, because that's not the point of being an Iron Man. The point of being an Iron Man is supposed to be difficult. The idea is just to make it less horrible, you know, remove the feel-bad, painful moments. So if you can bring them to the table, they're going to stop complaining as much. They're going to start engaging in the content, and then you'll get more fights. That's what you want, right? So the number one thing I think Iron Men deserve is an incentive to fight back. You know, if they kill the PKer that's fighting them, they can't take the loot. Obviously, they shouldn't be able to. That would be completely in the face of how Iron Man works. So if they kill the guy, they don't get anything for it. Even if they've got loot keys turned on, they can take the loot key, but they can't do anything with it unless they have another account that also has membership that they can then PK themselves and trade over the key and use that money for something on their main, maybe to buy a bond. But why don't we just take that idea and simplify it? Why don't we let Iron Men use the loot from loot keys to buy their own bonds? And again, these bonds would only be for membership. This wouldn't be allowing them to get GP or anything through PKing. It would just give them an incentive to fight back and PK and engage in the systems. If they can PK enough people, earn enough money, they can buy their own bonds and get membership. It doesn't affect the integrity at all, you know, they don't gain any items, they don't even gain experience. They just have an incentive, they just have something to aim for. It's already possible with the use of alternate accounts. I'm just asking for the ability to do it without needing an alternative account. It's not reasonable to ask people to have to run two or more accounts at a time, you know? That's twice as much membership they've got to pay. And a lot of us don't have other accounts, we've only got one. So yeah, it's just making that thing that you can already do a bit easier. You know, there's some questions to answer, like how is the value calculated? Do we need to give Iron Men access to the Grand Exchange so that they can sell the items, but then the money goes, obviously it doesn't go into their account, it goes into this special vault, which is like Death's coffer, you know, it can't be taken out? Or do we just do the items all get turned into coins at high elk value? that could work too. But the high art values of most of the items they're going to be getting are going to be way lower. So that would take forever, and I think that would kind of remove the benefit, the incentive part of it. You know, if they make the value of the item so low, it's not an incentive anymore. But that's the idea. I've seen it posted in multiple places. I won't take credit for it. But giving Iron Men an incentive to fight back would make them, you know, come to the table and actually engage in the PvP systems. And then you've got more PK, you've got more PvP. The other thing I think Iron Man could do with is some easier to acquire wilderness viable and PK viable items. Again, I've seen this suggested in a few places, so I can't take credit for it. But the idea is some gear that can only be used in the wilderness that is much easier for Iron Men to acquire. Because currently, if they wanted to have reasonable gear to fight back with, you know, something like barrows, that's a potential hundreds of hours of grinding to get that barrow set back if they lose it. No Iron Man is going to bother with that. So every Iron Man just goes to the wilderness with black d'hide, monk's robes, and proselyte. So they'll never be able to fight on an even playing field because they have no access to any good gear. The idea is to create some sort of wilderness exclusive gear that appeals to Iron Men. It's not Iron Man only, but it appeals to Iron Men, and it's, you know, on a reasonable playing field. It can be worse, you know, the mains can still have the advantage, that's fine. It's just giving Iron Men a fair shot. You know, so a Carol set on the GE is currently worth 2.5 mil. What if there was a shop you could go to and spend 3 mil to get something that's equivalent to Carol's, maybe slightly worse, but can only be used in the wildy, so only in PvP or in PV or wilderness content. It's not overpowered because it's not stronger than anything. It's just easier for them to acquire. You know, 3 million GP is still a lot for an Iron Man, but it's not hundreds of hours of grinding. And then they actually have a way of meaningfully engaging with the wildy, because they have something that they can afford to lose. And if a PKer comes along and kills it, hey, they just made like 3 mil, or, you know, at least however much it's worth on the GE, probably less than 3 mil. But, you know what I'm saying, like, they killed the Iron Man, they made 2 mil. That's better than some monk's robes. And the Iron Man actually fought back, gave you a challenge. You know, that's what you want, right? You know, the more Iron Men you can get into PKing, the better. You've got more people to fight. The fight's more interesting. There's less people voting no on your polls, which I'm sure you'd like, and there's less complaining, which, you know, everyone would like. The idea is there doesn't have to be a distinguishment between PKers and non-PKers. Everyone can be a PKer. You can be an Iron Man who PKs. There's a weird idea. On top of that, bring back Bounty Hunter, and maybe try giving some actual rewards to the PvP arena, because that's got a rank system with ELO. That could be really good as a way to make people, you know, ensure they have balanced fights, depending on how easy it is to smurf. But it's got this whole ranking system that isn't utilised at all because there's no one playing it, because there's no rewards. Come up with some rewards for the PvP arena that will, and get them through a poll and get people engaging in that system. And, you know, we could develop that, and that could be the thing that people use to get into PKing. You know, maybe that's what it needs. Maybe it has different brackets of different tiers of gear, so that you don't always have to be in max gear all the time. You can try in lower level gear, you know, maybe a free-to-play style with Rune 2 H's and scimitars, you know, just things to work your way up. Another big idea I had that I think could be quite powerful is risk indicators. So when you're in the wildy, some symbol above your head that approximately shows how much your GP you're risking. Now, obviously, this does kill a little bit of the surprise of like, oh, what am I going to get when you kill them? But if you see someone and you can see they're not risking anything, most people are going to be much less likely to put in all the effort of killing them. It's like, why am I going to waste my runes and my potions on killing this guy for no value? You know, yeah, killing people is fun, I get that, but it just reduces the amount of pointless killing. You know, if that person's risking nothing, I think a lot of people are going to stop bothering to kill them. It's just less toxic overall. But it also has the benefit of reducing any scams. How many times have I seen in a PKing video where someone comes up to Framed or Torvester and says, hey, do you want to fight me? I'm risking 3 mil. And the fight starts and he kills him, and he wasn't risking 3 mil, he was risking 30k, you know? Yeah, people can try, you can do trade beforehand to try and prove it, but then they have infinite boxes and they can use that to bank the loot. You know, if you've got this indicator above you that says exactly roughly how much you're risking at any given time, it just reduces that as well. So I think it's got benefits to PvPers and not just to PvMers. So that's another idea I had. it also makes it harder for you to accidentally bring your bank with you, you know? Sometimes people forget to bank their stuff, and they go in the worldy, and the game doesn't do a very good job of showing you how much you're risking, unless you specifically check the loot lost tab every time. You don't know that you're risking a lot, and then you die and you realise, oh crap, I actually took my cash stack with me, I've lost everything, I'm quitting the game. That's not a situation that is good, you know? Yeah, sure, the guy that killed you gets a free payday, but he doesn't really deserve it. He just got lucky, and because you got unlucky. It's not fun for someone to be able to take all your stuff by accident, you know? So I think that's another potential bonus that another potential idea we could look into. Right, so I should start trying to bring this to a close. So what do I want to say? I know I'm not a PvPer, but I think that PvP is just as important as PvM and Iron Man to the game. It's a big part of Old School, and it's part of the reason it's here. And it provides some of the best YouTube content that's out there, you know, Dead Man mode, things like that. People love to PK, and I think that the PKing scene deserves to be happy. I just don't want that happiness to have to come at the expense of everyone else's enjoyment of the game. So both sides, whether you're PKing or not PKing, please just try and think of the other person on the other side, the other human being on, you know, the other side of the screen. We don't need to be so rude to each other. We all just want to enjoy the game. Instead, let's try and get together and talk about solutions with each other. What would you want to see? How can it be better for you? Okay, that's great. But if that makes it better for you, how about this to make it better for me as well? And, you know, so on and so on. I don't know if anyone will bother to listen through all that, but anyone who listened to any of it, or even if you just skip to the end, thank you for listening. Let me know if this is something you want to see more of, or if you just want me to shut up, that's also fine. If I didn't clarify anything, or you've got questions, or you want to suggest things, tell me I'm wrong, then yep, just let me know in the comments. There's more memes on the way, more funny stuff, and Highlander Man eventually. This is just a change of pace because it's something that I think should be talked about, and I want to stand up for what I think is right. Sounds a bit dramatic for a RuneScape video, but I think we can make the game better. I think it's possible. I think these ideas could make it better. But again, I might not know what I'm on about, but at least I'm trying, you know? At least I'm trying. Yeah, okay, let's call it. I think that's everything, so peace.